There are very few games or bits of media I would call near perfect. The amount of elements you'd have to nail to do such a thing is such a long and rough list. You have to creatively have your pulse on the story, visuals, gameplay, sound design, music, and acting like your life depends on it just to even get close to something like this, and yet, the Portal series did it effortlessly. Portal is a series I grew up with and absolutely adored throughout the years, and today I'm so excited to talk about it. In this analysis, I will be talking about the indie developer origins of this series, the story and world presented in these games, and the cultural power of this series, and show exactly why these games work for so many people. My name is Sleep, and welcome to my analysis and review of the Portal series. Enjoy! The origins of Portal, in terms of concept, originate from a student game made by a bunch of college students made for their senior project released on April 19th, 2005 named Narbacular Drop. The name being absolute nonsense so that the game would be the only thing that would show up on search engine results when looking up the term. The game narratively focused on a princess who had no knees and could not jump being captured by a demon, with her sometime within her imprisonment finding out the prison is a sentient creature she could create these doors in to aid in her great escape. The main idea this game mechanically tackled came from American student and game designer Kim Swift. The idea centered around these demonic looking doors. Essentially, when you would put an item through one of the doors, the item would come out of the other. It was a relatively simple yet genius idea, and it was extremely easy for anyone to get a grasp on. The game itself outside of its mechanics wasn't anything too special, as it was only a series of 6 puzzles with a relatively smart premise. The young developers would demo this project around different student competitions, eventually leading them to make contact with a representative over at Valve Software. This eventually led them to demo the project over at Valve in front of some employees that include the infamous Gabe Newell. This is when the team in their entirety was hired on the spot to develop a version of Narbacular Drop on the source engine without them even needing to finish demoing their game. The team immediately went to work on their source part, and quickly the game evolved into something more in line with what we know as Portal. A lot of the assets would come from Half-Life 2 in these early builds, and Portals hadn't quite been able to be seen through like they do now, with developers using a relatively funny image of Superman as a placeholder. Interestingly enough, the game in terms of level design was mostly completed before the game got its own art direction. Most chambers in this area play the exact same as they do in the final release, with the only actual difference being an aesthetic change. Eventually, the game would have a complete shift in art direction, and Portal now visually was almost to the point where it looked like and it felt like the game we know and love, but there's a very crucial element missing at this point. The witty and killer machine GLaDOS was not even a thing at this point, and the conclusion to this game was completely different. Instead of the iconic fight we know and love for its robotic banter, Portal concluded with an escape from the facility with a giant fetch quest for batteries in the offices and lobbies out of the lab that, when completed, would open a way out. Eventually, the ending would go through many redesigns as the developers seemed adamant about creating a boss fight based around destroying something using redirected projectiles and or lasers. This concept probably originates from a cut boss fight with a very similar concept that was cut late into the making of Narbacular Drop. The boss, interestingly enough, early on was a lot harder than the one we know today, with you having to redirect less predictable rockets into a giant cube, and after the defeat of said cube, being thrown into a bullet hell room with a bunch of turrets forcing you to defeat all of them in a high adrenaline battle. This was a complete tone shift from the slower design of earlier levels, and so they cut this ending and repurposed and redesigned the end turret room into a final level that would show up late into the final game. Some redesigns of this fight would result in you pursuing this machine that seemingly wasn't doing anything wrong, and resulted in a lot of the developers feeling too much sympathy for the final boss as they were trying to destroy it. This is around when they would start experimenting with voice lines for GLaDOS, using text-to-speech bots for a while. Eventually, Alan McLean would hop on the project as the voice actor for GLaDOS, and only a couple weeks later, something big would happen to the development team. Gabe Newell would at an EA press conference put a lot of pressure on the development team by releasing the trailer for Portal to the public, with most of the team not even being ready for it. This would put the developers into a bit of a crunch, but somehow magically the developers overcame this and created the narrative and aesthetics that made Portal, well, Portal. The game was then released to the public on this fantastic package known as the Orange Box and would become a huge hit. But how did this game do this? Well, to find out, I think we need to analyze the game from the perspective of someone playing it and see how it works so damn well. Portal's title screen opens up on this ominous and futuristic room with this jail-like chamber front and center. The music is droning and empty sounding, making the listener experience this surreal feeling while also having this futuristic edge to it. The game in general gives off this clean and synthetic look to the walls, items, doors, and buttons you see and interact with. This very simple environmental design philosophy has made the game age extremely well. Something else that has aged extremely well is the genius introductory moments to Portal. This game opens up with the silent protagonist Chell awakening from stasis in a room with a toilet, stasis machine, and table with a radio along with various items in it. This small room lets you get accustomed with the controls, physics, and setting of this game. Here we are greeted by the sarcastic yet charming robotic voice of an artificial intelligence named GLaDOS. She will be your somewhat insincere yet encouraging guide throughout this whole game. You are introduced to the concept of how portals work in your first chamber when one opens up and allows you to progress further into the lab. Within the next few rooms, you are introduced to weighted button switches that allow you to open up various doors or move certain things. Cubes to put onto these switches, and the famous portal gun. Getting your hands on the portal gun immediately allows you to experiment with what you can and cannot place a portal on. The game's art direction makes it pretty clear what you can and cannot place portals onto, with darker, blacker surfaces being no portal zones and whiter, lighter surfaces being portal zones. You can easily discover this within the room you get the portal gun in by shooting onto the black walls on the door separating the upper levels. These rules are extremely easy to get a handle on and are accessible in a way that makes concepts like this easy to understand while not removing the depth that would come with something like this. I actually ran a little experiment with this game by having various family members of mine who haven't even touched a 3D game or barely play video games period play through the first 10-ish levels of this game just to see how well Valve pulled this aspect off, and the results speak for themselves. It's a really good introduction to 3D gaming. After the introduction of the main concept of portals though, you're introduced to momentum-based portal puzzles, walls that incinerate items, and balls of threatening energy that permanently activate switches which allow you to explore and see some of the possibilities surrounding the iconic portal gun tool. The game through all of this just clicks for everyone I've seen play it, but I don't think the game truly reaches masterpiece level until the 16th chamber in which you are introduced to the turrets. Here in this chamber, the game immediately allows you to indulge yourself in fantastic world building with some graffiti art referencing the insidious nature of GLaDOS, along with some other events or figures, while allowing you to experience the dangers of turrets and some of the things GLaDOS is willing to experiment with. The game then immediately follows us up with one of the smartest levels in a video game of all time, which centers around a single weighted cube and the eventual betrayal to said cube the game forces you to engage in unless you came in prepared with a cube from a previous chamber. This entire chamber is this cruel joke GLaDOS is pulling on you to make you experience loss after gaining this attachment to a cube for an entire level. This gives you, as the player, moral incentive to look for a way to defeat her and possibly get the actual fuck out of here. The next couple of chambers act as a complete test of your cognitive skills, which studies show the series actually helps strengthen while you work towards your end goal of cake and an escape. This all leads you to the finale and climax of the game in Chamber 19. Here you solve a puzzle in which you activate this railway and avoid various obstacles on set railway path. Towards the end of the path, in a sudden twist, you see a large pit of fire and realize that this is essentially a death trap. It's this iconic sequence that has GLaDOS showing her cards and leads to the iconic escape chapter. Right as you're about to drop into the fire, you set up a portal on the wall against the railway by the fire and portal through, evading the death trap. From here on out, you will not be navigating puzzles within the normal Aperture Science testing chambers, but rather exploring the backstage of the test chambers and finding your way out of this place. This doesn't come without threats though, as there are these giant pipes that could crush you, and GLaDOS herself setting up death traps in an attempt to prevent your escape. There's stuff like the aforementioned turret room that was going to be in the GLaDOS fight earlier in the beta, and the introduction of these rocket turret things that you have to use in a puzzle. Some really awesome new mechanics that just add to this amazing sequence. The big highlight though is when you finally make your way into the GLaDOS chamber. Here you finally get to see this giant menacing machine as she just absolutely lays into you with hilariously fucked up insults. She has this somewhat sarcastic and mean-spirited personality that makes her such a great villain to work towards defeating. The fight itself is this relatively simple puzzle where you have to get these personality cores knocked off of her and thrown into an incinerator, using rocket turrets and portal around your environment to reach said cores. Finishing her off has this really big and epic animation where all this stuff just gets sucked up into this light. You get an ending cutscene where you wake up on the surface of Aperture only to get dragged back in right at the end. The credits roll with the iconic "Still Alive," and this classic game concludes. This entire ending feels like such a well-executed payoff and satisfies the many fantasies of the player by showing the functionality of the portal gun in a more grounded place. The puzzles aren't hard, you just feel like a smart badass for pulling off an escape from such a sophisticated lab. The game balances player engagement with creativity in the level design, and it's just so infectious. Not very surprisingly, this game would go on to become a smash hit and the critical darling from the Orange Box collection. The media absolutely adored the concept of the game, and when the game was shown off at the EA conference and it got so crazy, there were entire fan games created around the project before it even came out. Most notably, the Portal Flash game created by Team We Create Stuff. This game would later be adapted into a series of levels by the same team when they were approached by Valve for an expansion on the original Portal titled Portal Still Alive, which is commercially sold for consoles. Valve didn't stop giving back to the community around this game though, as they released plenty of tools for fans to create and spend hours playing around in, which resulted in this enormous modding scene where anyone could truly do anything with the concept of Portal. The world had fallen in love with the concept behind the Portal series, and its impact would be felt in general media for years to come. Cartoons, films, games, and even Geico commercials would reference the iconography and concepts presented to the game, leading to this game reaching that kind of mainstream power not many other games, especially from this era, had reached before. Everyone loved Portal, even Valve, which led to teams getting interested to work on a possible sequel to this modern day classic. That was pretty interesting internally. Often a lot of the development practices have caused debate within their fan bases due to the lack of output and how employee interest entirely decides if there will be work done on a game or not. Luckily, like I have mentioned just a second ago, Valve had a lot of interest in Portal, and employees over there just hopped on this project immediately, leading there to be plenty of small groups just coming up with concepts for how exactly they would follow up and expand on the creativity presented in Portal. Interestingly enough, one of the big ideas they had running with when it came to the Portal sequel was literally removing portals. Yeah, really. This version of Portal 2, named FSOP, is a really interesting little bit of Portal development we know very little about when it comes to actual gameplay, and apparently is something the company has interest in possibly exploring in the future. What we do know about FSOP is the introduction of a lot of small concepts later implemented in the final product, such as characters like Cave Johnson, and some of the environmental art directions such as the robotic tile shifting that keeps a lot of Portal 2's various areas so interesting visually. Some of the more intriguing plot elements about this beta was the time period being set in sometime in the 80s, and there being a huge emphasis on Cave Johnson as the main villain, with GLaDOS somewhat making an appearance as is this little weird core thing on wheels. It was very strange, and eventually the game shifted back into a more classic Portal aesthetic and mechanics we know and love. Sometime within the switch back into a more traditional style, the team over at Valve came up with the idea of the core companion. This companion idea brought a lot of ideas that created a lot of problems, specifically with the choice of allowing the players to drop whenever they feel like through the game. The developers were absolutely stuck with trying to design levels that made carrying a core around not so annoying due to them being absolutely fixated for whatever reason on dropping the poor thing. Eventually they just decided to have the core companion work on his little rail system during the plot with little moments of carrying him around. Aside from this, it seems like a lot of Portal 2 came together really smoothly, and it really shows because what we got in the end was possibly the best puzzle game ever made. So let's talk about how this game achieves that title, for me at least. Portal 2 is an absolute beast of a game to analyze. Not only do we have an amazing single-player campaign to sink our teeth into, but on top of that we have some stuff like an entire campaign just for co-op and its own story, along with online modes and in-game workshops that give us literally endless amounts of content to mess around with. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Let's focus on the core of the game within the single player. Portal 2 opens up with this ominous shot of a broken GLaDOS on the title screen, showing a fair bit of time has passed since the previous game, and that the lab is in a very, very poor condition. Booting into the single player has the player waking up in a fairly normal looking room, in which you are given a pretty basic yet funny tutorial on general video game controls before being thrown back into your bed again. You wake up in the same room again, but slightly more messed up, being told by the intercom you've been out for a fairly long time. This is when you are introduced to the Steve Merchant voice Wheatley and engage in some great banter around brain damage and your lack of speaking, only communicating through jumps and such. Immediately after this, Wheatley has your room get moved through Aperture, and you bust out to embark on this quest to escape the lab once again, only this time with a robotic companion. This intro is one of the best of all time just due to the amount of information given to you in such a funny way. The soundtrack establishes itself well, and the physics and visuals look great. Moving on though, you get to explore Aperture once again, going through slightly adjusted versions of the beginning chambers from Portal 1, with some absolutely destroyed environments. Not so surprisingly, I think these chambers are a lot more to the point than the first game though, and perfect an already almost impeccable introduction to the series' concepts and mechanics. Moving on, around when you get the portal gun, you split off and reunite with Wheatley, getting some more fantastic banter and dialogue from both him and this pre-recorded announcer robot dude. Wheatley detaches himself from his rail, and you two go off to find some way out of here through some back rooms and such. At some point mentioning that we most likely have to go through the GLaDOS room to truly escape. After a bit of exploration, you two find yourself in a room filled to the brim with hundreds of levers, and Wheatley accidentally flips every single one of them, using an elevator, resulting in you reviving and reunited with a very angry and vengeful GLaDOS. She destroys Wheatley, and you get thrown into a pit to be tested on for the rest of your life. The next bit of the game is just GLaDOS absolutely laying into you with words as you are introduced to new concepts like the aerial faith plates, a pressure-based plate that launches you into a set direction, the emancipation grill, a force field that incinerates any items that you try to smuggle across it, light bridges, these force field bridges that you can walk on and use in tandem with portals, and the lasers and laser triggered buttons, which work in tandem to replace the energy ball puzzles from the first game. I really like the switch from the energy balls, is the lasers don't force you to wait to see if you have succeeded in landing a specific angle, and they really streamline the time taken for these puzzles while also giving an additional layer of difficulty while trying to keep the lasers on various puzzle buttons. Another really cool concept they added to the lasers is the laser cubes, which redirect and angle the lasers in a way that doesn't force the game designers to restrict themselves to only 2 portals. Within the first 10 minutes of being introduced to a new concept, you are given 3 more, which just expands the amount of creativity that the puzzles can mess around with, and it truly helps to elevate Portal 2 to another level. But the game doesn't stop with this pace too, as we are just getting started with the masterful work on this campaign. A few chambers into the game, and you find out in a very comedic way that Wheatley is alive and trying to contact you while also avoiding GLaDOS. After the reintroduction of turrets, you make your way to a light bridge puzzle, where suddenly the power goes out, and Wheatley opens up this big wall, allowing you to make a run for it with him from GLaDOS' test purgatory. You two formulate a plan while on the run to shut down her turret production, destroy her neurotoxin supply, and take her down. This is when the game's art direction goes off the walls in the absolute best way. You get these dimly lit areas along with these intricate and constantly moving machines that make Aperture feel so big and alive. It kind of reminds me of the movie Monster House, with all the moving parts fitting into this giant machine of a lab. The little robots and functions of each area just ooze with personality too. It gives so many great opportunities for the writers to have fun and write some good jokes. Eventually you find yourself by a testing site for the turrets and break into the little chamber that uses the functioning turret as a sample for the machine to attempt to copy. You insert a turret that is unable to shoot and move on. You then take out the neurotoxin supply by finding a tank that's holding all of it and lasering the pipes allowed to get out to where GLaDOS wants. Now all that remains is the confrontation with her. Luckily for us, she pulls a trap on the main character with a cardboard door and brings us directly to her. She attempts to turret us, but they just explode and damage the glass containing us that eventually breaks when she tries to gas the player with neurotoxin, resulting in Wheatley tumbling out. This is when we hear a voice telling us about a core transfer where we can replace GLaDOS with Wheatley, but it needs the consent of both robots. Luckily for us, we can disrupt the stalemate with a button press despite GLaDOS' best effort. After succeeding in this, Wheatley is now in charge and he lets us out, ending the game. Oh, wait. This twist is already well known. Yeah, so after Wheatley takes charge, he gains a bit of an ego suddenly, and gets into this argument with GLaDOS about how he was built to be a dumbass to nerf her intelligence, resulting in GLaDOS being turned into a potato, and you two being slammed down a seemingly endless pit during Wheatley's little hissy fit. When you finally land, you are separated from GLaDOS, and find yourself in this vast, abandoned part of Aperture Science. This is the oldest part of the facility and houses some voice tapes of the founder of Aperture Science, Cave Johnson, voiced by J.K. Simmons. Through these tapes that are played over the speakers, you get some lore on the shower curtain funded foundation of Aperture Science, along with the introduction to some of the stuff that they were experimenting with, such as the gels. The gels are these awesome new tools that you can use to manipulate jump height, speed, and the area you can portal. The interesting factor around these gels is the fact that they can stick to surfaces which allow for a large amount of freedom in the right circumstances, each one having different properties. The blue gel keeps the momentum of the player and objects while creating a larger jump height. The orange gel allows for an immense amount of momentum and speed increase, basically working as a momentum-based sonic booster that you can manipulate. The white gel allows for a larger amount of freedom in terms of portal placements, basically allowing you to place a portal on any flat surface. These make for really elaborate and fun puzzles with constant movement and incorporation of different tools. These are easily some of the most interesting and fun tools introduced in this game and are, in my opinion, explored in a pretty concise way. During the exploration of this mechanic, you reunite with GLaDOS and learn about her relationship with Cave Johnson. You see at some point GLaDOS was once the human assistant for Cave Johnson named Carolyn, and the white gel early established in the older Aperture area is revealed to be ground up moon rock. If you didn't know, moonrock is extremely poisonous to human beings, which caused CEO Mr. Johnson to get deathly ill. This left him in a situation where he was looking for a person to run the place when he died. Around this point in the game, there are these different posters or tapes about replacing body parts, and now robots are better than humans. Put two and two together, and we can see that Carolyn was forcefully and surgically turned into a robot as a replacement for Cave Johnson, thus birthing GLaDOS. This is all later confirmed in the famous Lemons rant, in which we both get some iconic line delivery and learn about his interest in storing human intelligence in a disk or machines to replace him, even if he himself isn't able to be put inside the machine.
Alright, I've been thinking. When life gives you lemons, don't make lemonade. Make life take the lemons back. Get mad! I don't want your damn lemons! What am I supposed to do with these? Demand to see life's manager. Make life rue the day it thought it could give Cave Johnson lemons. Do you know who I am? I'm the man who's gonna burn your house down with the lemons. I'm gonna get my engineers to invent a combustible lemon that burns your house down.
I absolutely adore this section of Portal 2 for its fantastic display of its narrative, along with the mechanics shown off here. It gives more character to an already beloved villain, and makes her more into something you could somewhat empathize with. The visuals in the section are grand and use these great colors, and the score is composed in this way that further engulfs you in the world of Portal. This entire section ends with you and GLaDOS finding a poster with some paradoxes that attempt to destroy Rogue AI, and hop onto a lift to the upper area of the lab. When you arrive in the upper lab section, you immediately run into Wheatley, with him attempting to do some testing on these really messed up companion cube turret mutant things, due to him having this weird itch. More on that in a second. After solving the puzzle the little cube turret things were meant to do, you reunite with Wheatley and begin a series of tests under his reign, as the overall lab gives warnings about it falling apart, due to him not really knowing how to run the place. During this section, you learn about the aforementioned mental itch that works similarly to a drug addiction, in which anyone in the GLaDOS body has to maintain this high from test subjects finishing puzzles on their own. There are a couple of interesting little gameplay additions in this segment to spice it up from earlier GLaDOS segments. Take for example the introduction to the excursion funnels, a tractor beam you could portal to catch things midair and move them in a set direction. This is very useful for moving certain objects like companion cubes and turrets out of the way without actually having to be near them. There's also the inclusion of the little turret cubes, but that doesn't really change much gameplay wise outside of them moving every once in a while and being a pain in the ass with them moving off of buttons. The game gives you a pretty decent amount of time to get adjusted to the mechanics added, while also ramping up the difficulty naturally so that the game doesn't just get super easy all of a sudden. The story continues with Wheatley getting more and more irritated that he's built up a fairly big tolerance to this euphoria he gets from solving tests. This results in him digging through different storage areas in Aperture and insulting the player in an attempt to keep his composure like GLaDOS did. He slowly begins to get more sinister with his tone, making it pretty obvious that he's found something in the back to replace the main character with, while also not so subtly hinting towards an eventual death trap. There's actually a really cool detail on one of the chambers where you can see one of the robots from the co-op mode running around in the background, implying and later literally stating that these robots will be your replacements. Wheatley actually pulls a pretty well done surprise on you though mid-chamber and throws you into a surprise death trap with a bunch of spiky crushers, and here you get one of my favorite gags of the game.
Well, this is the part where he kills us.
Hello! This is the part where I kill you!
You get out of this giant spike trap by using some gel from earlier, and boom, you and Potato GLaDOS are on the run to go and face Wheatley. The environmental hazards and sheer scope of everything are put on full display here in this escape section, with Wheatley hauling entire building-sized test chambers together in an attempt to crush you, making you think quickly while navigating large chasms with the fear of falling into the void. Throwing constant spike traps at you, chucking entire rooms of turrets in your way, and just a perfect build-up to a climactic confrontation. When you finally make your way up to Wheatley's lair, it feels like the natural mental evolution from the Portal 1 GLaDOS fight. He takes into consideration every mistake she made during that initial fight by removing all portal surfaces, creating a shield for himself, and attempting to bomb you. Luckily for you, he was stupid enough to leave a gel pipe in the room, and you were able to formulate a plan around it. The goal of this fight is to bomb him in exposed areas until he's knocked out for a second. Then GLaDOS will bring in different cores using the elevator terminal to corrupt Wheatley enough to create an opportunity for a core transfer like we did before. Doing so results in another stalemate situation like we did before, and all we have to do now is hit the button to transfer GLaDOS back into the body. But Wheatley cleverly enough sets up a bomb trap by the button, and you are blasted back onto the floor. Conveniently enough, a roof panel opens up from the top, and you are able to see the full moon. Yes, the game is really gonna let you do what you think you're about to do. You shoot a portal onto the moon, suck you and Wheatley into space, and GLaDOS is able to finish him off by smacking him into the vastness of deep space forever. She drags you back through the portal, and you are left unconscious. You later wake up in front of GLaDOS and her new co-op boss. She deletes your human consciousness, half-heartedly thanks you for helping her out, and then tells you to basically get the hell out of there. With a choir of turrets singing as you ride your way back up to the surface, you get out of the lab with your beloved companion cube and are thrown into a cornfield, ending this masterpiece of a game on a somewhat mean-spirited yet thankful song, Want You Gone. What's there to say that I haven't said about this campaign? It's an absolute treat to experience throughout the entire runtime with fantastic dialogue, great puzzles, phenomenal new mechanics, beautiful visuals, amazing music, and impeccable voice acting. This campaign alone probably makes this one of my top 3 games of all time, and we still have so much to cover, so let's briefly talk about the other entire campaign. Co-op mode has you and another friend playing as the previously mentioned robots Peabody and Atlas after the events of Portal 2, where you and a friend go through 6 different courses with around 8 to 9 chambers per course. Most of this campaign isn't exactly story heavy, it involves you and a friend basically calibrating the robots to work together better and become greater test subjects. Later on, the plot kind of devolves into you guys kind of like working together to commit mass genocide, but we won't really talk about that. Mechanically speaking, the game will reintroduce all the concepts from the single-player campaign in an equally effective way, while also taking into account that you will have 2 people here with portal guns. In fact, probably the biggest mechanic in this section is the fact that you have 4 portals and 2 people to account for throughout this whole journey, which creates its own benefits and issues for most players. This mode is probably the most accessible in terms of overall audiences, and is usually the one I see most being replayed nowadays due to the mere fact that you can teach a friend who's never played a game before as you go along. This campaign actually serves really well as a great introduction to video games for people who haven't really played them before. And in its own little way, this might be the most genius part of Portal 2. It enhances the accessibility of the series while also giving a layer of challenge and thinking when it comes to how you would approach the game. I would highly recommend you at least check out this mode if you have a buddy or family member over, because it makes for some great entertainment. Yeah, because the red would push over there, because you would move the yellow over there, and my purple would push us that way.
Your purple is right there!
I know! You're gonna replace my purple with a yellow, and I'm gonna replace your yellow with a purple.
Okay, Sleep, how the fuck am I supposed to replace your purple when I can't shoot where the purple is?
I think only one of us is supposed to get through.
No, so we're in this system where it pushes all the way up. Okay.
God damn it.
Basically, it's supposed to go one at a time, but you rushed it while it was up on the ledge. Right?
You got yourself down from the ledge, you...
I did, but you rushed.
No, we were literally... You could have... We were one click away.
Okay, so the point is... Right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna put red right here. You're gonna put your purple right there.
Yes.
Right? Right?
Yes.
Okay.
3, 2, 1, go.
We had it backwards.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'm gonna put a blue there.
Okay. You're gonna put a blue there. I'm gonna put a red here.
Yes. Wait, no, put your yellow. Put your yellow. Put your yellow there. Put your yellow there.
Why would I put my yellow there? It
Because I
goes
can't shoot the fucking thing over there.
You shoot this.
No, I don't. Oh wait, yes I do.
I've got the yellow there because I'm putting a red here.
Okay.
And that'll send you
You already had
flying
it.
through
You had
the
it. You had it. Okay, come on.
Okay. Yeah.
3, 2. Set up your fucking yellow.
I didn't set it up.
Oh wait. Wait, what do you mean?
Okay.
No, because you're gonna be controlling this thing, because I can't control it with the angle I'm at.
Yes, you are. You're gonna put purple right there.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, go.
You didn't. Dumbass. Do you see how you have purple up there?
Verity, please, for the love of fucking Christ. Just put something there. Verity, please, just put it there. Put it there. Put it there. Put it there. Please, just put it there.
Switch roles. Switch roles. Switch roles.
I'm gonna go deranged.
Switch roles. Switch roles. Get the fuck off the tractor.
I'm going fucking deranged. Verity, please.
Trust me. I can't.
Verity, all I need you to do is put a portal there. For the love of Christ, please, Verity. Put a portal right there. Just try it, please. Oh my god.
I'm Steve Zissou.
What?
Yeah.
Verity, I'm going to put a purple here, right there. You are going to put a yellow and red there. Put the first portal there. Verity!
What color do you mean there?
Red. 3, 2, 1, go. My god! Was it that difficult? You fucking... The developers shortly after releasing this game gave the tools to fans and communities, and with this came a slew of fan games, levels, and applications of this game. The impact of this game, or in fact this entire series, cannot be underestimated nor restricted to the realms of a simple video game. Portal as a whole has been Valve's biggest success in terms of demonstrating the power of video games when it comes to incorporating narratives into a medium in a way that no other medium could. It's demonstrated the power of modding or community with the sheer amount of mods around this simple concept, to the point of us not even needing to fully explore this world again with a Portal 3. And it did this all while striking a balance of accessibility and difficulty in a way that doesn't anger old fans and scare new ones. Portal left itself open to experimentation in a way where it doesn't force developers to fear making a sequel, as shown with the Lab VR game, which served as Valve's little stepping stone into VR, and it's kept its huge legacy in pop culture by respecting its world and concept. Portal would be nothing to anyone had it not kept exploring the mechanics and world of aperture science, and with that, I think this serves as a great lesson on how to approach accessibility and creativity with the video game medium. Thank you guys for watching, I am Sleep, and this was Portal.